Okay, I've got my image in front of me. I'm going to start the drawing, but before I do, I'm going to give this paper a little bit of a tone. So this technique is going to be similar to charcoal reduction, except we're not going to tone the paper quite so dark. A light gray. And usually just a dirty chamois will give us just the right value. If you don't have a dirty chamois like I do, you can always very lightly tone your paper with charcoal. Just one layer. You want to get a light gray. So generally speaking, you want to tone the paper to the general value of your drawing. Since landscape, if it's in daylight, is on the lighter side, right? We're dealing with lots of bright values. Having a paper tone that's close to that will get us there faster. If you're doing a dark drawing, let's say objects in a dark room or some kind of dark interior, a dark tone might be a little more appropriate. So in this case, we're dealing with daylight, a lot of light values. I'm going to tone my paper a light gray like this. Don't worry too much about making it perfectly even. Right? It'll even out as you draw. All right. Next step, I need to sketch in my composition. So at this stage, I'm not going to worry about perspective too much. I'm not going to worry about accuracy. I'm going to place my objects. Treat the composition very, very simply. We have a tower here. Think about how big it needs to be. So it goes up this way. Here's the front edge, going across like this, going this way, like this. And then we have a rooftop going this way, like this. We have our second tower over here. I notice that it is about approximately half the width of the first, like this, right? I'm looking for negative spaces, sketching your composition. There's no simpler way of laying out your drawing. You need to lay it out first before you start thinking about perspective. Don't worry about too much angles, though having an understanding of where things go definitely helps with your eyeballing. So we have a little bit of space here, we have a little bit of mountain here, we have another building here, and then we have another building this way. Here's our wall. Right, we've got this diagonal shape in the foreground, some kind of bench. Who knows? It extends all the way to here. And then, what else? Well, look, at this stage, I can start laying in the perspective of the situation. So step one, sketch in your shapes freehand. Don't worry too much about accuracy, though now that you understand the perspective of the situation, your accuracy will be better. Once you've got the sketch, once you've got the composition, now I need to figure out, based on my sketch, where my horizon line is. So we've already gone through the analysis of figuring out where it is. We know that it runs slightly below the mountains here, right about there, like this. Right? So it lines up, if you guys remember, with the fence here, with this little concrete barrier. Put in your horizon line. Run it from end to end. Make sure it's actually horizontal. That's important. Don't make it too dark. This is a line that you're going to erase eventually. This is the equivalent of a sketch line, a construction line. That goes this way. All right. Now let's figure out, once again, just like we did in the photo, where your vanishing points are. Once again, look for clues well above or well below your horizon line. So I'm going to take a measurement of this rooftop right here. Let's take a measurement, drop it down to your paper. Then take your ruler, line it up with the angle you've measured, and sketch in a line. Very lightly, this is a construction line. So in this case, if I follow my line back, it's going to run off my paper by about, let's take an exact measurement here. It looks like about 4 inches. So on this side, the vanishing point for the tower, much of the building, is 4 inches off my paper. All right, so I know where one vanishing point is. Let's figure out where the second one is. We're going to check the angle, drop it down to the paper. I notice that that angle is a little tiny bit steeper on this side, like this. Line up your ruler with that angle. Draw it down, down, down. Where it intersects is your second vanishing point for this tower. Now, in this case, it's probably going to be about 10 inches off the side of the paper. When you have a vanishing point that far away, here's what you need to do. And this is anytime the vanishing point goes beyond, let's say, 5 inches, maybe even 10 inches. You're going to create a grid. We know that lines going back in space this direction are going to be perfectly horizontal here at the horizon line, right? Here is the top angle, here is the horizon line. Find the middle angle at approximately in between this distance. So right about here, like this. Then divide the angle here, like this. See, I'm creating a little grid, a little guideline to help me along. So this angle needs to be a little flatter than this angle, and in between, there's going to be an angle that runs in between the two. Right? Do you see I have a little grid going? That's what you need to set up when you have a vanishing point that's really far away. You need to set up some kind of guidelines. You can keep a mental note if the vanishing point is about 5 inches. On this side, it's so far away, it helps to have little guidelines running through the image. Okay, so I've got my 2 vanishing points. We'll deal with this tower later. We know that it has slightly different vanishing points. Let's start dealing with our first object. Let's figure out where it starts. It starts right about here, like this. Here's the front edge of the object, like this. Based on the width, did I get the height of the object right? Use your proportion measuring tool. You're going to measure the object side to side, then compare that to the width. 1, 2, a little bit more than 2. Did I get this right? Here's 1, here's 2, here's a little bit more than 2. If it's a little bit off, you can drop it down. So all the tools that we use in observational drawing, your proportion measuring tool, your angle measuring tool, of course, your horizontal and vertical alignment are going to apply in getting your composition right. So we're still in the sketch phase a little bit, right? Let's start sketching in some of our objects. We have the top of the roof here. We have angles going this way. My tripod's in the way. Going this way, like this. Sketch it in. Use your ruler to make sure it's exactly right. It's going this way. Going this way. Like this. All right, how far down does this go? How do we do that? Well, we're going to check the width. And by the way, we can measure the width of the side and see how many times it goes up. Or, for instance, here's another way to measure. Let's get the width here and compare that to the height of the architectural division here. It looks like these two things are the same. Let's draw a line. Let's make sure it lines up with our vanishing point on this side, like this. You can see how helpful that guideline is in making sure that we're going the right way. So this thing just needs to be a little bit flatter going this way, like that. We can see that the tower is a little bit narrower this way, like this, on this side and this side, like this. It goes a little bit wider here, goes like this. By the way, don't be afraid to use your right angle for your verticals, right? All right, this corner lines up right here, like this. Use every architectural perspective trick at your disposal to get things right. So, for instance, we have 2 arches here, 2 arches here. How do we make sure that these arches are perfectly centered? Well, one thing I notice is that their widths, the widths between the brick here, the arch, the brick in the middle, and the arch, they're all a little bit the same. So we have how many divisions? 5 divisions. We have 5 divisions, right? We have the column, the arch, another column, an arch. So altogether 5. How do we get 5 divisions? If you guys remember, we find 5 even increments. Let's measure that. Might be easier to use centimeters. You guys do whatever you feel like. Let's see. Let's take a look. Can't see anything in this ruler. It's not particularly clear. Okay, 2.5. So 2.5 divided by 5. What is that? That is half an inch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 5 even divisions. Now we're going to run our lines from each division going back in space. And then how do we find the vertical separations? How do we do that? Do you guys remember? We covered this in 1-point perspective. We run a diagonal. So once we have a diagonal running through, at each intersection, run a vertical line, and that's going to give you your divisions. Which perspective tricks you use? When you eyeball. When do you eyeball? It's up to you guys. Try to use as many perspective tricks as possible. You can see how perfectly it sets up these arches. So we have an archway here, like this. We have a 1, 2, 3. We have an archway here, like this. And now we have 2 even archways going here, like this. And they look very, very close to what's actually there. Right? Here's one. Here's another one going this way. Up. This one goes like this. Okay. Now we can see that these arches are the same height as these. So we're going to run 5 even divisions running the other way. Let's do that. Run a diagonal. Here are your vertical divisions this way. And we know that the arches here are the same height, here and here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like this. And then here are your arches running this way. Okay, they run all the way down here, like this. Then we have another division here. Running this way. Running this way. Let's see what's happening here. Okay, we've got a little sculpture here. And then, well, it looks like we have a little post here and here. Here and here, just off to the side. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, let's work our way down. Here, approximately, we have a window. Notice that the window is centered. How do we center a window? Well, this is something else we've done. Let's find the center of this rectangle. Going this way. Here's the middle of our rectangle. Running like this way, and now we can center a window. So let's place the window right about here, like this. And you can see that if it touches here, it's going to touch here, like that. And that's going to help us, through mirroring, to get this little rectangle right. All right, so here the tree starts taking over, of course. Right? It's going down, 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 like this. And then somewhere here we start having this building, probably a little bit lower. Oh, no, that looks like it's about right. Which way does it go? Well, we already know, based on the angle, that it runs to the vanishing point over here, like this. Okay, so now we've got our brick wall here. It's going to run slightly below the horizon line to our vanishing point over here, like this. How wide is it? Well, you can always measure it against something you've already drawn. Let's measure the height of the brick wall against the width of, it could be the height of the archway, for instance. Notice that the archway and the wall are about the same width. this way. The building drops slightly below our eye level, and on this angle we can't really see, but we know that the angle here runs to the angle going this way. Like that. We know it. Okay. So I'll talk to you about how to render trees later. For right now, I just want you to get their general shape. Just outline them like this. We'll get to them later once we've dealt with the perspective of the situation. So we'll talk about how to render textures, all that kind of stuff. Right? Right now, just get their general outline, their general shape, height, width, all that kind of stuff. So let's get these cypress trees. They're pretty fun to draw. You guys will see. Right, going this way. Okay, so now we have this kind of brick border here, this barrier here. If you remember, the vanishing point for this barrier has different vanishing points than the tower. So if you remember that this thing had a vanishing point that was considerably further away, right? It was running maybe. Let's take a look. This needs to go down a little further. This way. Now, we know if one vanishing point goes really far away, our second vanishing point starts moving in. And sure enough, if we check the angle right here, you'll notice that it's running right about there into our horizon line. Let's take a look. Let's measure it. Now, we barely need that line, really, because this brick wall is sort of an isolate. It's the only thing in the picture that has those two vanishing points. Let's draw vertical lines going this way. If we saw the bottom of this border, it would run there, but we can't. Can't really see it. Okay, so in this case, this border runs to a vanishing point that's well off the paper. Where does it stop? Well, use your vertical alignment. So I noticed it stops just slightly past this brick wall, right about here, like this. Now, if you can see the top, which you can, this line needs to recede to this vanishing point. Going this way, here is the thickness of the border. It's a little bit hard to see in the photo, right? But it goes somewhere like that. All right, let's keep going. So we have a building here. I'm assuming that this rooftop recedes to the vanishing point of the larger tower. How far down is it? I'm using my horizontal alignment tool to figure out that it runs right about here, like this. Then we have a little wall here going this way. We have an angle tapering this way. The roof is sloping. A vertical line going this way. We have a little tubular cylindrical tower that's running like this. Again, we're still dealing with the sketch phase. This cylindrical tower is slightly, the cylinder here is slightly above your eye level, which means that it has a curvature curving upward a little bit. Going this way. Then we have another piece of wall going like this. Then we start having the tower. Now, I didn't initially in my composition place it quite in the right spot. Not a problem. You can see that once I start working, I start making adjustments. Here's the front edge of the tower, this way, like this. Here's the other side of the tower. Some of this is eyeballing, obviously. These are things that are measurable. I can take the width of the tower, see how many times it fits into the larger tower. Right? Let's figure out how tall it is relative to this tower. So I line up my pencil here and see where it lines up against the first tower. It runs to right about here, it looks like. All right, now we need to figure out the vanishing point for this tower. If you remember, it was a little bit different than the larger tower. Check your angles. You can see that the angles are a little bit flatter going this way, which tells you what? On this side, the vanishing point is going to be a little closer. Which tells you what about the vanishing point over here? If this vanishing point is closer, this one is going to be further away. So whereas the vanishing point for this tower was 4 or 5 inches off the side of the paper, The vanishing point for this tower, that might be a little bit too extreme. Maybe is 20 inches off the paper. Not quite the same vanishing point. All right, well, what's the next step? We've got 3 even divisions here. 1, 2, and 3. Let's divide them a little more evenly, going this way, like this. Follow your vanishing points, right? So here's the roof. Here's division 1. Going this way. Going this way. Going this way. Going this way. And then this one drops slightly below the bottom of the tower. This probably needs to go a little bit higher, I think. Okay. So that goes in this way and goes in this way. Let's drop this down a little bit to make it a little bit more even. All right, the tricks continue. So for instance, we have shapes that run this way, like this, and then we have a similar shape over here. How do we get similar shapes here and here? By using mirroring. So we can first find the center of this rectangle, going this way, like this. Find the center of the rectangle going this way, like this. Right? What's the next step? Well, we know that if the shape goes from here and touches here, like this, it's going to touch the opposite diagonal at the same width. So now we've got the same width here. Now we can decide that our arch starts right about here, going this way, and runs like this. Now, the middle 3 arches, too small to really bother measuring out. We could find 3 even increments. Don't bother. Don't bother. Okay, so now this is a little bit harder because we have 2 increments here as opposed to just 1. Again, guys, you can eyeball a lot of this, a considerable amount. However, if you can, try to use as many of the perspective tricks that I showed you as possible. This is your opportunity to practice this in actual real life. So to find the center, you can run a crisscross, running this way. How much of this do perspective artists do landscape use? Depends on their desire for accuracy. If you want something perfectly accurate, you want some kind of really tightly rendered architectural drawing, they're going to use a really sharp pencil. They're going to do it absolutely everywhere. However, if you're doing fine art, eyeballing is perfectly legitimate. So just sketching in the height here, transferring it over to the other side, will give you results that are accurate enough. So, depends on your degree of accuracy, how much accuracy you want in a drawing. Right? Quite often, when I'm outdoor sketching, I'll use my ruler to make sure the lines are straight. Will I go through, say, this perspective trick to make sure that everything is right? Probably not. Probably not. I'm just going to eyeball the distances. But the reason I'm able to do it is because I've got enough training and understanding of 1 and 2 point perspective and its tricks to set up my increments properly as they're going back in space.